Hey guys, Crypto here with another video, and I was wanting to do something like this for quite a while. I mean, I had theories, about this when these movies came out, and I have done videos that involved Snoke before, but I started really looking into stuff as it pertained to a more detailed approach as to why I believe that he was 100% meant to be Darth Plagueis. And there's a whole bunch of stuff here, so I went through a whole bunch of points, did a lot of research, went through a bunch of different theories from other people and stuff of that nature. The only conclusion you can really come to is that that's who this guy was meant to be. So the first thing you notice with Snoke is he's scarred. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is his appearance and his clothing and how that relates to some other things. So he is scarred pretty badly on his face, on his head. We don't know where else he's scarred. He definitely went through some form of abuse from somebody. What I would suggest is that those scars were put there to illustrate what Palpatine is telling Anakin when he said he killed him in his sleep.
Unfortunately, he taught his apprentice everything he knew. Then his apprentice killed him in his sleep.
And so because Plagueis was more powerful in the Force and he was able to create life, he actually was able to sustain himself despite those injuries, whether it was a lightsaber wound or what have you. And so he's left scarred and marred. And I mean, how else are you going to show that, right? Like, how else are you going to hint that? Because what is he going to do? Have his shirt off? Like this weird, skinny, creepy old guy. So I think that's why they did that. I think they thought, hey, this kind of will bring it all together when we reveal that this is Darth Plagueis. And that's really going to shock people. But the only way to really do that and to put it all together and make people realize, what went on and how in the back of their mind, maybe subconsciously, they were thinking he might have been Plagueis, was to put those scars on his face. Because again, how else are you going to do it? Like, there's just no other way. The other thing is he's very tall. He's Mun levels of tall. And I know he's not a Mun per se in the movies, but you could make the argument that he was a variation, perhaps, or maybe like a half-breed or something of that nature. But they definitely didn't go with exactly the Mun look, although the Last Jedi concept art, he definitely looks like a Mun. Keep in mind that the concept art for The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens was done sort of in sync. Some of these images that you'll see that are Last Jedi concept art were actually concept art done during The Force Awakens. It's one of the reasons that these movies, there's no time in between. They used elements from both films. Or they used elements from the concept art for both films. That's a very important thing to note as well, because I think that was the plan. And I think Rian Johnson decided to switch it up for whatever reason. I don't know if it was his ego or just to be a jerk, and we'll get into that a bit later. So there's a few things to talk about here when it comes to his looks. So if you look at the Force Awakens novelization, for example, Snoke watched the rise and fall of the Galactic Empire. Okay, well that would kind of make sense if Plagueis stayed alive, went into hiding or whatever, and just sort of let Palpatine do his dirty work for him, and which makes sense when you think about his character, and we're going to get into some more stuff. And also in the Force Awakens novelization, they allude to the idea that he may have had other students other than Kylo Ren or before Kylo Ren, which in the Plagueis novel he did. There was a few people, and then he kind of made his decision with Palpatine, right? That's kind of how it went down. The other thing is, Snoke wore a ring with a piece of black obsidian from Darth Vader's castle on Mustafar. That's in the Last Jedi visual dictionary. And when you look at that ring is etched with the glyphs of the Duarte. Now, why would they do that if this is some rando? So the Duarte, remember in the prequels when you'd see Palpatine's office and those statues were there? Those were the four Duarte sages. They were called the four sages of Duarte, and they were ancient philosophers and lawmakers, and they influenced the laws of the Galactic Republic when it was formed, so many years ago. That actually makes a lot of sense if you think about it, because Plagueis was more philosophical. He was very much about wisdom. He's kind of giving homage to these sages that were seen as wise. It's said that those statues in Palpatine's office, that he stole them from Darth Plagueis. So that all makes sense, especially when you factor in the way he's dressed. He's not dressed like a Sith Lord with the dark cloaks and all that stuff. He's literally wearing like what you would think a philosopher or a wise sage would wear, right? And then the slippers, like we all made fun of his stupid slippers, but again, that would be more in line with sort of the wise sage guy than, space boots or something like that. Again, you have the connection with Vader's castle. It all kind of comes together with the way that he looks, that he's tall, he's scarred from what happened to him from Palpatine. He's wearing the ring of these ancient philosophers and wise sages, because remember, it's Darth Plagueis the Wise. All those connections makes him different from your average Joe Blow Sith. But anyways, so you look at all these things that you put them together, it kind of makes sense. He's super duper old, he's scarred up, he's wearing different outfits, he's more of a philosopher, more of a sage, a wise sage looking guy. He's very wealthy, obviously. How did he make the First Order? Where did it come from? He's obviously wealthy. That's Plagueis. And so all of it kind of made sense when you watch the movies that was the direction that they were going to go. Then you get into the wisdom part of it, and there's even more there, right? So you have the obsidian ring and the connection to the Duarte and all that stuff. That's all sort of pointing to his wisdom. And then you, of course, have Palpatine talking to Anakin about it, calling him Darth Plagueis the Wise.
Did you ever hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise?
How cool would it have been in the movies if they had followed through with this original idea? So Palpatine is so cunning and so amazing of a villain, right? And he's talking arrogantly about destroying his master in his sleep. So how do you top that? How do you make a villain that supersedes Palpatine? You make a villain that is basically using him. He's off hiding somewhere, knowing, based on how he taught him and his force powers and everything else, that he was going to do what he did. And so why would you get involved? Just chill out, let him do it. And then he's arrogantly talking about how he killed him in his sleep. The whole thing ties together so nicely with that. Alas. Of course, in James Lucendo's novel, he's Darth Plagueis. He's known as the Wise, so there's the wisdom factor. Kylo Ren calls him wise to Han.
My son is alive.
No. The Supreme Leader is wise.
And again, the Duarte were known as wise. They had arcane wisdom and legal acumen. So you put all those things together, the size of him, the scars, the different things he's wearing. He was a different type of Sith, but just way more powerful than we'd ever seen before, which made perfect sense. And the sad part is, you take in, for example, Andy Serkis. Andy Serkis was devastated, by the way, when he heard that they were killing Snoke off. He was shocked. Andy Serkis said that his understanding was that Snoke was more powerful than Vader and the Emperor, which would make sense if you're trying to make a villain that's even crazier and bigger than the one you made before. You can't go lesser than, right? You can't really do that. Not in a story about the Skywalker family and all that stuff, which they screwed up. But he was really disappointed, and he really had expectations, which tells me when he says stuff like that somebody was telling him that was going to be the case. And I believe that was J.J. Abrams. And there's more to this, even with Daisy Ridley as well, that points to the fact that J.J. Abrams' original plan was that Snoke was Darth Plagueis. I believe that 100%. You look at all these signals, and we got more now. When you listen to the music, when you listen to his theme compared to Palpatine's theme, his theme is even more deeper and more bassy and almost more evil in a way. I guess that's what they were trying to convey. And that would make sense if you're trying to bring in a villain who's the next level, the next step up from Palpatine. I guess Rian Johnson just thought, hey, wouldn't it be fun to screw around with that? The other thing about this that's very interesting too is he says the return of Skywalker, and he's referring to Luke, but he doesn't say Luke, he says Skywalker. And then you have the whole Kylo Ren and the grandfather and all that stuff, Darth Vader, it's like there's an emphasis on Anakin there. He doesn't say his name, but you get that feeling that it's the bloodline, which comes from Anakin. And then, and Snoke believed that when Darth Vader didn't kill Luke, that was what he believed caused the Galactic Empire's downfall, which, of course, it kind of did in many, many, many ways. So there was a focus on Anakin, which, again, he was alive prior to Anakin, much prior to Anakin. Then you look at the visuals in The Force Awakens. So when you first see him, he's this large, huge hologram looking down on Hux and Kylo. That is a total throwback to the Max Lucino cover art from the Plagueis novel. Look at it. He's huge. He's not actually that big, but he's huge on the cover and he's looking down. Palpatine's bowing to him. The only way his size would work is if he was a hologram talking to him. It's just, all of it is indicating Plagueis, 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 Plagueis. And yet, that's not what they went with, which was so absolutely stunning to me. Then you have the Daisy Ridley stuff, where she actually kind of almost slipped up and said that was the plan at a Comic-Con. And then, of course, they play it off like, oh, no, and something else or whatever. They act kind of stupid. And JJ kind of motions like, oh, no, shut up.
Any mention of Darth Plagueis in episode 7?
Oh. Is that...
Larry?
Any mention of Darth Plagueis in episode 7?
Oh. Is that...
Larry? What is it?
I don't think I heard correct. Is it Darth Vegas? Like Las Vegas?
And Daisy Ridley almost spilled the beans. You take from this what you will, but this tells me that this was their plan. And a certain guy with a round face decided, no, I'm going to do something different. It's pretty clear to me, you look at all the evidence, it adds up, that was the plan. And the other thing that's so crazy about this too is with Rian Johnson is you had so what J.J. Abrams did. The TFA has a lot of issues. It sucks, but the two big things, the two big mystery boxes, I'll say, or the two big plot points that he left the viewer wanting to know more about or wanting to know what they were, was Rey's parents, who Rian Johnson made nobodies in his movie, and Snoke. That was the real big one. I mean, there were Snoke theories all over the place. Everybody's talking about it. And then he made him a nothing burger. And then JJ was like, well, I guess if he's a nothing burger, he's just some stupid clone now. What am I supposed to do? You killed off the villain. The other thing I want to bring up, too, is Snoke is so powerful that he's the guy who set up the Skype meetings, or the Force bonds, or whatever you want to call them, between Kylo Ren and Rey.
It was I who breached your minds. I knew he was not strong enough to hide it from you, and you were not wise enough to resist the bait.
So he's powerful enough to introduce this new crazy force power we've never seen before. Well, that would only be justified if it was somebody at that level. It wouldn't work if it was anybody else. Some random Palpatine clone is doing that? Then Palpatine should be able to do that, shouldn't he? If this guy knows how to do it, why didn't Palpatine ever use that method? When you introduce a new villain like that, a Sith Lord that's bigger and crazier than Palpatine, was actually behind everything even more, it would make sense that he would have those additional powers. So then I went through a few ideas from some people, back when there's all these theories. By the way, isn't it arrogant? Like, remember when Rian Johnson posted that photo of him saying your Snoke theory sucks? Remember that? You know what I think that means? That was him saying that he thought that JJ's idea of him being Plagueis sucked. That's what I think he was doing in his arrogance. I am sure of it. Why would you do that? Why would you say to fans, your theories suck? Because a lot of the theories were that he was Plagueis. We were all kind of like, that makes the most sense. It ties the whole thing together. Why wouldn't it be? So some people think like, okay, so when he died, the Imperial fleets that remained vanished to the unknown regions, to some coordinates or whatever. And then they somehow returned with Snoke at their head. And then, of course, that he was, carrying out a grand plan and he was staying by himself in the unknown regions. I think it made more sense to just put him on Exegol, running everything from Exegol. Like if he can use the Force to make people see things and visions from across space, like he did with Rey and Kylo, I kind of thought it made sense for him to stay on Exegol when he did those types of things. I think that would have been a really smart... That's what I did in my Sequels Reimagined. He's on the throne. Then there's the whole issue of, like, what do you do with the prophecy? And I've said to people many, many times, you can't... There's nowhere to go. Like, Disney's idea of just saying, oh, well, he's a dark sider. Like, what are you going to do? So a guy that was trained by Palpatine is a Darksider, not a Sith. I think the only way you could have done it, and that's how I did it, and because again, you can't have sequels that involve these things unless you kind of not change the prophecy, but reinterpret it. So the reinterpretation, from my opinion, that made the most sense and tied everything together was that he seeded Shmi. He created Anakin through the Force. Used Palpatine to use him, and the whole time Palpatine thought he had taken care of Plagueis, and that he was always waiting in the wings, way over here on Exegol. The way I dealt with it was to say that the prophecy wasn't wrong per se, but it may have been misinterpreted, or he wasn't doing anything. He was off over here. There was no one was using the dark side for years and years after that. And then Yoda says to Luke on Ahch-To that it doesn't mean, just because there's another evil in the galaxy that we're now seeing doesn't mean what your father did didn't matter. It still mattered, but that doesn't mean evil can't still come back or a new evil show up. So I think that was really the only way you could do it. And then, of course, having Snoke, who's Plagueis, being the one who, through the Force, created life in Shmi, and then knew that Palpatine had no idea that it was him that did that, and that Palpatine saw Anakin as this miracle Force user that he wanted to use, was part of his plan. And again, that ties everything together. Now, in my sequels, of course, in the end, Luke is the one who deals with him in a very different way than he did in Jedi. But again, not a power versus power like they did with Rey and Palpatine. It's a very nuanced way and planned out way that he finally kills Plagueis. There was a way to do it. It's not perfect, but it's a way, because you can't have Anakin fulfilling the prophecy and then there's no more Sith, because then all you're left with is just, oh, look, he does everything a Sith does. He acts like a Sith. He has a red lightsaber. He does all these things. He has the same motivations. All he cares about is power. Oh, but he's not a Sith. That's dumb, in my opinion. It's just a quick, easy flick of the pen, and oh no, he's not a Sith, so it's okay. And that's the route they decided to go rather than the more complex route that I went, which I think was such a mistake. And I think JJ, as crappy as JJ was, I think that was one of his big things, was trying to think of a way to make it work. Because it's very obvious to me that was the original plan. And then I think Rian Johnson's just said, well, there is no way for it to work. Your Snoke theory sucks, JJ. And then he just killed him off, and he was just nothingness. And we were all left with like a what the heck just happened moment. The other thing that's cool is, like, what this brings about is that he knew that Sidious would kill all the Jedi. He knew the Republic would fall. He knew Vader would eventually kill Sidious. And he knew Vader would be defeated to bring balance. And so all he had to do was just sit around and wait for all these things to play out. And then everything's dealt with, and everybody thinks it's peaceful, and the New Republic is demilitarized, and then he shows up. That, to me, is like the ultimate villain. He's got the excess Force powers, better than Sidious, right? The Force Skyping, the ability to create life. And he's got the patience, the wisdom. It falls in line with Darth Plagueis completely. All that to say, guys, when you look at all of this information, you look at all of these examples, even from Disney themselves, I think it's very, very clear that they had this as the master plan. And again, you look at that Daisy Ridley video, she almost spilled, it was really close to completely spilling the beans. So somebody had told her that Snoke was Plagueis. Because that's the first thing that came out of her mouth. Oh, that's Snoke? And then, so that was their plan. So essentially, whether you like that or not, like you might think that sucks and it wrecks the prophecy thing and it wrecks Anakin, all that stuff. Now, obviously, they wrecked him a lot more with having Palpatine came back, did they not? So there you go. But even if you think that all sucks, what essentially happened, and I think that's clear as day with your Snoke theory sucks and Rian Johnson, all this nonsense, is that Kathleen Kennedy just let Rian Johnson completely deviate from what they were planning on doing, or at least what JJ wanted to do. That's not to say that JJ's some genius. I just think this was the obvious way to go. Again, his size, the scars, the rings, the whys, the this, the that. All of it pointed to this. Comes out of nowhere from the unknown regions. And then once he killed him off, JJ was like, well, what am I supposed to do? You know what? Kathy, if you're going to let that happen, if you're going to wreck the plan I had, guess what I'm going to do? He's a strand cast crappy clone that was meaningless. I honestly believe that. I think he said, you know what? If you're going to let this Rian Johnson guy wreck the plan we had, for whatever reason, you just think he's some genius, then fine. Let's wreck it then. Let's go all the way. And so he made him a clone, brought back Palpatine, and just made... I honestly think, like, I know J.J. Abrams has had some flops. I'm not saying that he's some perfect guy. But I do think there's egos involved. He had a plan. She let Rian Johnson ruin it. And then he just said, okay, well, this is what you're going to get now. Way to go, dummies. That's honestly what I think happened. But either way, guys, you can see all this evidence. I think it's very clear. It's very obvious. Let me know in the comment section what you think. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. It always helps the channel. Feel free to check out the rest of my channel. Have yourselves a really good day.